Okay, did you all get the notification that we've started the recording? Okay, great. Well, hello everyone and welcome to the 2024 Open Texas Conference. The Open Texas Conference is sponsored and convened by two cooperating organizations, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, the state agency that serves as a resource partner and advocate for Texas higher education, and the Texas Digital Library, a library consortium providing services that enable free and open access to scholarly, cultural heritage, and educational materials. My name is Ariana Santiago. I'm the head of Open Education Services at the University of Houston Libraries, and I will serve as your moderator or host today. And we welcome you to introduce yourself and ask questions in the chat. And please feel free to turn on your webcam, but mute your mic unless you're speaking. Also, please be aware that we are recording the session today. The recorded sessions will be available within the conference attendee hub for 30 days. And following the 30 days, the recordings will be accessible through the Open Texas YouTube repository. I'll also place the conference code of conduct in the chat for your information in just a moment. And I am going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. The session today is titled OER Advocacy in Action, Strategies for Sustainable and Inclusive Education. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you all.
All right, thank you. Can everyone see my slides? Great. All right, I'm going to turn off my video so that doesn't distract you all, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to our presentation entitled OER Advocacy in Action, Strategies for Sustainable and Inclusive Education. So before we get started, I'd just like to introduce us. I'm Chelsee Dickson, Assistant Director for Scholarly Publishing and Research for the Kennesaw State University Libraries, and I'm also the Principal Investigator of this project.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sabrina Davis. I'm the Open Educational Resources Librarian at Texas Tech University, and I was a co-principal investigator on this project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristina Clement, and I am the Assistant Director for the Collegiate Librarians at the Kennesaw State University Libraries, and I serve as a co-principal investigator for this project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Jo. I am a User Services Associate at the Sturgis Library at Kennesaw State University, and I served as a data analyst for this team.
All right, so here's a rundown of what we'll discuss today. We'll start off with a brief discussion of OER advocacy and look to the literature. Then we'll give you an overview of our Affordable Learning Georgia grant. Next, we'll get into our study design, the timeline, and our research process. And after that, we'll give you insights into our data analysis and coding process. Following that, we'll describe our results and findings from our study. And finally, you'll receive some major takeaways, strategies, and resources for you to advocate for, promote, and sustain your OER. So now I will hand it over to Sabrina.
Thank you, Chelsee. So we're going to go ahead and start with the literature, just a brief overview. Next slide. So Kristina, Chelsee, and I actually worked together on the Journal of Open Educational Resources and Higher Education editorial team. In our time working together with the journal, we realized that among many other commonalities, we were all interested in OER advocacy and sustainability. Specifically, we were interested in how OER was being advocated for and sustained post-production. This common research interest led to many informal conversations that would eventually become the basis of the research project that we'll be talking about today. Now, before we get into the specifics of our research, let's take a look at the literature to get an understanding of the current state of OER advocacy and sustainability. So in recent years, conversations have increased around the topic of sustainability of OER projects and OER programming at the institution level. From the OER project perspective, the concept of sustainability within open education has come to have two meanings: sustainability in terms of discovery and sustainability in terms of production. For those working in the open education space, you'll likely agree that OER discovery can be tedious and frustrating, simply because there are so many repositories, and the search functions for those repositories are different. To aid the discoverability issue, researchers have made many suggestions, such as improving and connecting the current OER repositories and enhancing tagging through the use of AI, or just trying to establish metadata standards. In terms of the sustainability of production, the current literature states that more needs to be done to encourage the creation of sustainability workflows, and that in these workflows, OER production needs to be separate from OER distribution. But there are few examples of these sustainability workflows for OER advocates to utilize. Our project also looked at OER advocacy. Most of the current literature regarding advocacy focuses on advocating for OER initiatives, OER usage, or OER programs. While this type of advocacy is important, it does not tell us how to advocate for OER that have been produced at the institution level. While going through the literature, it became evident that there were gaps in the research. It is clear that higher education faculty and leaders acknowledge the value of OER, but have difficulty finding OER that fills their needs. As we began to look at the gaps a bit, we did acknowledge that one of the reasons for discoverability issues may come down to the fact that an OER may not yet have been created for a specific subject. However, we wondered why faculty were not always aware of the plethora of OER that were available. This question led us to two hypotheses. Number one, there may be a lack of strategic promotion of published OER. And number two, there may be a lack of sustainability plans for OER that have been published. When looking at sustainability and advocacy of OER, it is important to acknowledge the barriers that open education advocates are facing at the institution level. As the literature points out, some of the barriers for OER sustainability include discoverability, and the fact that there is not currently a single catalog of published OER. Many OER authors are also unsure about Creative Commons licensing and how to adapt or reuse existing content. Barriers for how to advocate for OER post-production are not really addressed in the literature, but we posited that some barriers could be just lack of support for publicity that is comparable to traditional publishers, and not knowing who, either on or off campus, could help with the promotion and advocacy of OER once it has been published.
And so we thought to ourselves, what good is an OER left to gather dust on the proverbial digital bookcase, which is a great mental image, if I say so myself. But after uncovering the gaps in the literature and the barriers, this was the guiding question which inspired us. And we sought to answer this question through research. We wanted to know what happens after an OER is created. How is it marketed? How is its use sustained? And librarians are really in a prime position to help OER creators establish and maintain their work's sustainability. And what better way to investigate than through Affordable Learning Georgia and their new research grant opportunity? So round 24 was ALG's first time offering research grants, and we seized the opportunity. We applied and our proposal application was successful. Our project is titled Success in Open Educational Resource Advocacy, Strategies and Resources for Creators, and we were awarded $10,000 to conduct research on OER sustainability and advocacy through a qualitative survey with open-ended questions. And this will result in the creation of a scholarly article based on the research, which will outline steps for librarians to help OER creators and supporters utilize advocacy and outreach. So the ALG application reviewers believed in our project idea. Here is a quote from our reviewer feedback. I love that this is researching not the typical student success, but how OER creators are getting their content into the hands of others who might use it. And another quote from the reviewers reads, "The team has a background working together on a national OA journal and will do a great job creating a survey. They should be able to get this survey into the hands of many OER creators." So we're very glad that the reviewers and the program director and manager at ALG supported our vision. And now I will pass it on to Kristina.
All right, thanks, Chelsea. So next, we are going to take a brief look at how we designed our study. So after reviewing the literature and considering several of our own experiences with promoting and sustaining OER, we came up with 3 questions to guide our research, each based around a facet of the problems that we were seeing. So related to OER promotion, we wanted to know, how do librarians promote OER created by faculty? Related to the perception of OER promotion, we wanted to know, how do OER creators perceive the promotion of their work? And related to the sustainability of OER once they're out there in the world, how are OER creators sustaining their work? We designed a 3-part survey in Qualtrics that used a combination of multiple choice, checkbox, and open-ended questions. We sought and received exempt status from the Kennesaw State University Institutional Review Board and the Texas Tech University Institutional Review Board. The first section of our survey was designed to survey academic librarians who have worked with faculty at their institutions who have created OER. Specifically, we were looking to see if academic librarians who helped OER faculty creators were involved in any part of the promotion of the OER, including planned promotion of the created work. We used a particular demographic question related primarily to job function and some skip logic in Qualtrics to ensure that the respondents who indicated that they were academic librarians were the only ones who answered questions in this section. The second section of the survey was designed for OER creators, which could also include academic librarians, because lots of us do create OER. This section asked OER creators about their perceptions of the promotion of their work. And then the third section of our survey was also designed for OER creators, which again could include the academic librarians. And this section asked OER creators about their strategies for sustaining and promoting their OER. We provided 2 definitions for our survey respondents, open educational resource and creator. So we defined OER, open educational resource, as an openly licensed, i.e. public domain / Creative Commons, educational material that can be used, reused, modified, and redistributed for teaching, learning, and research purposes free of charge. We defined creator as an individual, i.e. librarian, faculty member, teacher, etc., who creates and adapts an open educational resource for teaching, learning, and/or research purposes. These definitions appeared in all 3 sections of the surveys for respondents to use as a reference. We started our survey design in January of 2024 and developed our 19-question survey at that time. We also, around that time, sought and received our institutional review board exemption from our 2 institutions. The survey was sent out via listservs, and respondents were able to take the survey from about late February 2024 through early April 2024, and we received a total of 98 responses to the survey during that time frame. Over the summer, we worked on cleaning, coding, and analyzing the data, and we ended up with 62 valid responses. And so next, I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who's going to tell us a little bit about our data analysis.
Kristina. So let's take a look at data analysis and coding processes. So we conducted thematic analysis to find revealings in our qualitative data. After the survey closed, there were 98 total responses. So the first step was to clean up the data to remove repeated submissions, incomplete submissions, and non-consented submissions. So that left 62 valid responses. And then all the research team members independently coded a selection of the qualitative survey question, and then we compared codes to ensure consistency, reliability, and validity. Next came the codebook creation. I used validated coding from the research team to finish coding the rest of the survey questions and developed a codebook. And that codebook was used to identify major themes. Furthermore, I looked within each major theme to develop a common code clusters, which helped to identify major subthemes. Now, next, let's take a look at the codebook. 3 major themes emerged: challenges, sharing, and strategies. Next, Kristina will dive deeper into each theme and reveal what those sub-themes reveal to us.
So as you just briefly saw, we found 3 major themes: challenges, sharing, and strategies emerge from the data. I'm going to share a little bit from each of these with you, and if you want to know more, we are working on the full article, as Chelsee mentioned earlier, and we do hope to see that through to publication probably over the course of the next year or so. The first major theme that we identified was challenges, and we defined challenges as the major challenges faced by academic librarians and/or OER creators in promoting or sustaining created or adapted OER. We specifically asked questions in our survey about challenges faced, though it was interesting to note that respondents also detailed some of the challenges that they were facing in questions that were not specifically designed to elicit responses about challenges. This told us that the theme of challenge when it comes to promoting or sustaining an OER is quite major. Within the major theme of challenges, the sub-theme of lack of emerged from the data. And anyone who has created an OER, adapted an OER, or worked with someone who has done either of these things, this sub-theme is probably not a surprise to you. Librarians and OER creators are short on any number of things, including time, energy, support, personnel, attention. You name it, it is probably lacking. One respondent touched on the sub-theme of lack of with this response to the survey question for librarians about challenges faced in promoting OER and how they have addressed them. This respondent identified as an academic librarian who is faculty, either tenure track or tenured from a public academic institution of 20,001 or more students. And they said, in reality, faculty are not interested in promotion. Rather, what they are creating is more for immediate concerns. For example, chair told them it has to be done, want their students to benefit. While bigger concepts of sharing with the world are great, faculty rarely have the bandwidth or support to promote their work. In this particular example, the librarian detailed the challenges that they see the faculty facing and the lack of time and energy they have to properly promote their OER. While many of our librarian participants also mentioned similar situations where things were lacking, either for themselves or the faculty they support, many of our non-librarian respondents also echoed these sentiments, indicating that they certainly do not have the time, energy, support, or attention to properly promote what they create. The second major theme was sharing, and this theme brought to light the most common ways in which academic librarians and/or OER creators sought to share the created or adapted OER. Several of our survey questions asked respondents to indicate what methods they used to share out about OER. So while many different sharing strategies were selected by the respondents, the responses in the open-ended questions revealed that some of the more effective methods of sharing revolved around events and other recognition programming, with a few respondents detailing quite unique, innovative, and effective examples. They use these examples to generate support and excitement at their institutions for OER creation and adaptation. And here's one of my favorite examples from a respondent about a unique and innovative way that their university recognizes OER creators, adapters, and adopters. This comes from an academic librarian who is faculty, either tenure track or tenured, from a public academic institution of 20,001 or more students. They said, we do multiple annual recognition events for faculty using and creating OER as a part of a grant requirement we receive from our university's chancellor's office. We provide digital badges for adopters and creators to include in their email signatures, which sounds pretty cool. Recognition events appeared to be both popular and effective, according to the data, and this is a particular topic that is probably worth exploring a bit further. The third major theme was strategies, and this theme explored the ways in which academic librarians and/or OER creators make efforts to promote created or adapted OER. Overall, within this theme, it was clear that a common sentiment was there is only so much we can do, and this came from both librarian respondents and non-librarian respondents. Most of the librarian respondents gave more detailed reports on OER promotion strategies, and they indicated that they regularly tried to encourage faculty OER creators to keep their materials updated and to get them peer reviewed. But unfortunately, these suggestions often fell on deaf ears. The sentiments that came to light from the data in this theme connect back to the first theme of challenges and the sub-theme of lack of. These seem to be incredibly connected. The lack of time, energy, support, etc., feeds directly into just how much librarians can support OER creators. If key elements are missing, there really only is so much we can do to adequately promote and sustain the OER that is being created at our institutions. Common sentiment among the librarian respondents was working with faculty members to ensure proper promotion of the OER that they created. And this quote here from an academic librarian who is tenure track or tenured at a public academic institution of 10,001 to 20,000 students summed it up rather well. They said, the plan depends on the faculty member. The bare minimum is promoting through the library's social media platforms and sending a notification out through an OER listserv. We work alongside the university's marketing team to try and promote it through internal messaging. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chelsee, who's going to discuss some of the strategies and resources.
Thank you, Kristina. Yeah, so now for some major takeaways from our study, as well as strategies and resources you can use in the promotion, marketing, and sustainability of your OER.
So the strategies listed here were the top 4 strategies used by both librarians and OER creators in our survey. So those are promoting through word of mouth, campaigns, depositing OER into an OER collection, recommending newly published OER to colleagues, and sharing about newly published OER on listservs.
So according to our study data, word of mouth promotion was selected the most as an OER promotion strategy for librarians. Word of mouth promotion can include speaking about your OER project or the project you're hoping to promote at presentations, or even sharing the OER with other relevant faculty members and their departments. As far as OER creators, word of mouth came in as the second most selected promotion strategy. It's also the most effective method of promotion, according to our data. And based on personal experience, I'd have to agree. Word of mouth campaigns are very effective and have a significant success rate. There have been many times in which a faculty member at my institution has contacted me because they heard about my services through a colleague. So word of mouth works. If you're looking to incorporate a word of mouth campaign into your OER promotion and marketing plan or strategy, we suggest you start by first gaining an understanding of your institution's culture. How do faculty and/or librarians feel about open education in general? If the overall outlook on OER is positive, you can leverage that positivity to build trust with your stakeholders. Always have an elevator pitch ready to share with faculty, librarians, even students, and be on the lookout for opportunities to share it. You might present at a conference and pitch your OER. Institutional events like authors' receptions or award ceremonies, which highlight the work of OER creators, are great opportunities as well if you can get a few minutes on the agenda or program. Or better yet, host an event yourself and use the time to celebrate OER champions and share their work widely with your institution's community. Next, consider depositing your OER in an OER collection or encouraging your faculty to do the same. Our survey data found that librarians rank encouraging creators to deposit or link their OER in their institution's repository and encouraging the library to add the OER to an OER collection as the third and fourth best strategy. Creators ranked depositing or linking their OER in an institutional repository as the best strategy. And digital promotion was, overall, in the top 4 most effective methods of promotion. So there must be something to that, right? Utilize your institutional repository. You can reach a much wider audience by depositing or linking a copy of your OER in your IR. Make sure to first work with your institutional repository supervisors and specialists to ensure you're adding correct and accurate metadata for your work. Collaborate with your institutional repository staff to determine the best collection for your work. And bonus points if your institutional repository has its own OER collection. Once it's added to the IR, it's more likely to receive an increase in citations, views, and downloads, and you'll get a dashboard which outlines these metrics. OER can also be added to the general library collection. Both as a creator and a librarian supporter of OER, you can work with your library's collection development librarians to get this OER into the library's collection, either digitally or in print if possible.
So a simple recommendation can go a long way. If you're a librarian or a faculty member, there are a few things that you can do to get the word out about any newly published OER. Some faculty in the same department may not realize that one of their colleagues has published an OER. So you can request time to meet with a department to highlight the published OER and ask the creator to talk about their experience through the creation process. For many campuses, it also may not be clear that there are services available to aid with OER creation, or that faculty at that institution are in fact creating these resources. So a recommendation is to periodically present at faculty organizational groups, such as Faculty Senate, so that you can help get the word out about published OER. Another strategy is if you were talking with a faculty member during a consultation and realize that a recently published OER may be useful to them, be sure to bring it up and make them aware of that recommendation. Listservs can also be a great way to get the word out. Many survey respondents listed sharing an OER on a listserv as their primary method of promotion. Librarians will be familiar with the Spark OE Forum listserv and the ALA Scholarly Communications channel through ALA Connect. For faculty creators, you can also share about your newly created OER through your discipline-specific or other professional listservs. We have seen some excellent examples of these promotion emails in library listservs, but we wanted to provide you with a few things to keep in mind as you're crafting these emails. Consider including an image of the cover of the OER. They say not to judge a book by its cover, but having an image could help this email stand out. Be sure to include a compelling description about the OER and what it covers. Also, don't forget to include a link to the OER, as well as any subject tags, so that people can quickly identify if this OER that they're reading about in an email may actually be useful to them. So when I discussed the literature at the beginning of this presentation, I noted that both OER production and OER distribution needed to be considered when doing any sort of promotion or sustainability planning. The literature notes, and I think many librarians have seen, the wonderful resources that are out there that focus on OER production workflows and how to help OER creators get from project idea to project completion. What is missing in the literature, the data from our research, is a plan for how newly created OER will be distributed and promoted post-production, since this is not something that is typically included in the workflows that many of us are familiar with. To aid with this, librarians and other open education advocates may begin to think about how they can include post-production and sustainability methods in their OER creation project management plans and workflows. So while this particular project has come to a close, we are, unsurprisingly, left with even more questions about OER advocacy and sustainability. So we came up with some considerations for future research. The first is related to metadata. We know that good and consistent metadata aids in discovery, but there is no standard across the board, and many OER repositories have different metadata schema. One further area of research could ask the question, could we continue to look at AI, and how could it possibly help to link repositories, aid with tagging, and maybe develop a recommendation system?
Another area to consider for future research is OER cleanup. Collaborations with proofreaders, copy editors, and university presses might help with the sustainability of OER. And we'd love to explore those collaborations and systems of support. Like, what happens when creators include OER cleanup in their overall OER post-production advocacy and sustainability plan? How can librarians and university presses assist in this cleanup? Some OER are vetted through peer review, but what about taking one more step? Would that help bust the myth that OER are low quality?
The last future research consideration could be on promotion planning for OER post-production. As our survey respondents noted, one of the more mentioned barriers for them was time and resources to focus on OER post-production. Are there things that can be done to make this easier? What do open education advocates need to start including this in their promotion and sustainability planning? For example, for states that have state-level or OER organizations or support, is OER promotion something that they could aid with? We know that promotion is vital to the sustainability of OER because, as Chelsee said earlier in this presentation, what good is an OER left to gather dust on the proverbial digital bookshelf?
And that completes our presentation. Here are our references. And if you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them. We'll also place a link in the chat to our Padlet if you'd like to ask us questions there instead.
Thank you so much all for the fantastic presentation. Again, everyone in attendance, please feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you'd like to just unmute yourself and ask your question out loud, you're welcome to do that as well, or in the Padlet. So I'll keep an eye on those things and see if we have any questions coming in. So while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, I have a question. And you might have mentioned this and I just missed it, but I was curious from your survey, particularly the part that was directed towards librarian respondents, were there certain roles that tended to respond as being involved in promoting OER? Like, was it mostly OER librarians? Are there other roles within the library that were responding that they were involved in promoting OER? Is that something that was included on the survey?
So we actually did not get quite that granular with what the librarian position was because we wanted to cast a fairly wide net because there are a lot of librarians who touch on OER without it being their primary responsibility. A lot of folks did say, like, I'm the only one at my institution that does OER, and it is like a fifth of my job, or it's not even in my title. So I think perhaps for our future research, getting a little more granular with what your specific librarian title is and how your job relates to OER would be a really interesting facet to look at. So thank you for that question.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too, with this need for promotion of the resources, kind of like who's doing that? Where does that fall? So that would be really interesting to hear about in the future.
Absolutely.
So we have plenty of time for questions. And while folks are thinking about what questions or comments or discussions that they might have, I have another question. So it might be me with all of my questions. So I was thinking about the part of your study that was geared towards creators. And I think there was a slide where you had a quote from someone kind of saying the promotion and sustaining the materials aren't always necessarily top of mind for creators. You're thinking more about those immediate concerns, right? Like what's right in front of them. So did you see, how do I frame my question? I guess what I'm asking is, did the creators of materials see this as a gap? Or was that not something that they saw as a gap because they have other pressures or concerns and lack of bandwidth? You know, does that make sense?
I can definitely answer that, but want to see if anyone else on the research team wants to tackle it first. Yeah, okay.
I'll let you what you want to, Kristina, but I can chime in after you're done.
Yeah. So I'll be honest, our OER creators who are not librarians did not answer a lot of the open-ended questions. And I think either that maybe, well, that might indicate that they just didn't have the time or the energy or felt like they could provide an answer, which I think in itself is quite telling because our non-librarian respondents filled out everything that was not open-ended, but then filled out very few of the open-ended questions, whereas our librarian respondents almost like 100% across the board filled out the open-ended questions, or at least some of the open-ended questions. So I think that quote that we pulled from a librarian who's talking about, you know, how they're seeing that their faculty are not really interested in promotion, definitely I think it relates quite a bit to us seeing our non-librarian respondents not filling out the open-ended questions and answering what we were hoping to collect from them. So that was kind of interesting. Chelsee, you want to chime in? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the assumption that a creation or a marketing plan is not a part of a creator's thought process in creating an OER is correct. I don't believe, from what we've seen in the literature, the gaps that we found, and from our data, it just is not top of mind. It's mostly, you know, we want to create this OER for our immediate need. Someone asked us to do it. We felt compelled to do it because we care about student success or, you know, accessibility, et cetera, but they are not thinking about post-production and what comes after, which oddly enough is something that we want to possibly explore in a future grant. You know, why is that not front of mind? And what would happen if it was? Would that help with myth busting in OER? Would that help with others creating more OER and sustaining that use. You know, if you were to create a plan that actually included promoting your OER, marketing it to the furthest audience, and sustaining that work through the use of others, what happens then? Maybe something incredible. So, future considerations.
Yeah, I definitely, I guess like it resonated with me or clicked with me when you all mentioned the difference between production and promotion, and that there's all these fantastic OER production workflows and resources, and how do you create the resource? But it doesn't necessarily go beyond that. And I feel like that's definitely, at my institution, we've kind of reflected that as well. We haven't done as much on the promotion end. So this is really interesting to hear about your study.
Thanks. And we actually just got a question in the Padlet, which I'll read out. So our contributor says, I find that OER Texas is difficult to navigate. Are there specific repositories that you all tend to search more for OER? Have you noticed repositories that your OER creators go to? I think you mentioned repositories earlier.
Well, I mean, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think for me, you know, OER Texas is one that I, as the librarian, will tend to navigate more so than I send my faculty to it. But it really depends on like what they're looking for. So like if they're looking for, you know, a textbook and they've created this textbook, you know, helping them make sure that, you know, they check the right box in Pressbooks, for example, so that it ends up on the Pressbooks directory. You know, helping them get it uploaded into the open textbook library, which is handled through the Open Education Network. OER Commons is a good one. I mean, it really just depends, you know, like what have they created? You know, if they've done PowerPoints that they want open, or if they've done, you know, quizzes or things like that, not so textbook based, then OER Commons or OER Texas is definitely a good place for those to go. So that's what I would say. Chelsee, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to hype Affordable Learning Georgia as usual. I think even Jeff Gallant was a presenter at a previous event during this conference, so he probably talked about ALG and what they do, and you know they provided us funding through this grant to do this research, and so I'd like to promote their digital repository, which is called Open ALG. It's hosted on Manifold, so if you type into Google Open ALG, it'll come up as probably the first result, but it is a repository of all of the Affordable Learning Georgia grant projects. So a lot of them are actually created by Kennesaw State University employees, because we tend to get a lot of those grants, but also a lot of other faculty from around the university system of Georgia, which includes like 26 institutions. It's got a very beautiful interface. It's very easy to navigate. The projects are there and in full text. Some of the projects include not just textbooks, but homework or ancillary materials, things that will go and supplement your course rather than just the textbook itself. And also, if you look up affordablelearninggeorgia.com, I think, or .org, I'm not sure which, I'll have to look that up and put it in the chat, but there is also a repository of grant proposals. So if you're interested in how a project came to be, there's an entire repository of these proposals, which will outline the steps of how faculty decided to create this project and what resources they used to create it. And if you're interested in potentially applying for a grant either in Texas or somewhere else, it could lay the foundation for your own project.
And it looks like we had someone else add to the Padlet a link to another place to search. It looks like it's Open Resource Catalog. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. So if folks want to pop over to the Padlet, there's a link to that. I guess we can drop it in the chat here as well.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges in promotion, is that there is no universal repository, right? We're naming all these different little repositories, but there's not one universal place that you can go to access these materials. You kind of have to have your own little resource guidebook to access. So another future consideration for research.
Yep.
We do have another question that's come in the chat. It says, I'm a fairly new librarian, so I was wondering what you would recommend thinking about when writing grants.
That's a good question.
So like, are you asking like applying for grants, like what we did for this project? Because if that's the case, yes. So as you know, the Texas representative in this research project, and in this group, I would say, you know, if possible, look for ways you can collaborate outside of your institution. And even better if it's outside of the state. You know, there's so many people doing OER work all over the country, all over the world. And, you know, so having different perspectives and understanding that, you know, we're all kind of doing this work is really nice. So yeah, I would say, you know, look for collaborators.
I would also say when writing your grant applications, something that we did that I think made our application successful and will hopefully make our next one successful was really outlining what the problem is that we're wanting to address. So the grant that we earned is unique because it's a research grant, and it was the first year that Affordable Learning Georgia was doing these. Most of their grants are for creation, right, Chelsee? Yeah. So I guess that's another thing is what kind of grant do you want? Having a grant that allowed us to do the research was quite nice because an OER could grow out of this eventually, but the research needed to be done first. So getting the funding and the time to do that was important. So we made a point to really specify why this research needs to be done. And I think as one of our ALG reviewers mentioned, like our project is not focusing on the student success aspect, which is what a lot of OER research does focus on, because we do need to prove that these resources are benefiting students. But I think what we're looking to do is, you know, for these resources to benefit students, faculty need to know they exist and they need to persist and sustain and be around long enough and be relevant long enough for students to benefit from them. So we kind of found a gap that we feel closes this loop a little bit. And so really highlighting why what you're wanting to do for this grant is important and how it's going to fill a gap can be a way to really justify to your reviewers of that grant why you need these funds to do that thing. And you can spell it out really plainly. Say, this is important because of whatever.
I would also add to that, if you can get your grant proposal after you've written it and incorporated both the things that Sabrina and Kristina mentioned, have someone else outside of your immediate environment read it and see if it makes sense. Like we are all very entrenched and enmeshed in OER, the open movements, libraries. And to us, our proposal made sense. Our first draft was chef's kiss, wonderful, great, no changes needed. But we had someone else who is in higher education, but not libraries and not necessarily in the open sphere, read it. And there were some problems. There were some things that we did not address that she felt would come across better if we enhanced and added more detail to the peer reviewers and to the ALG manager and things like that. So try to have someone else read through your proposal and see if they can make sense of what you're trying to do and see the significance of the problem that you are trying to address and take their feedback into consideration.
I'd also say don't be afraid to apply for grants. There's a lot of money out there that goes ungranted. So throw your hat in the ring. The worst that's going to happen is you get a no, and then you have a very nice proposal to submit elsewhere. So go for it.
In fact, that's what happened to us. We submitted originally to write a book chapter, which was denied. And so we said, okay, what else can we do with this? Because we think we have something here. The person that reviewed our book chapter initially said, this is great, but not a good fit for our book. And so we thought, okay, let's change it around a bit and maybe we use it to apply for a grant. And it ended up being the right fit.
We have a few more minutes left, so if there are any other questions, we certainly have time for them. This has been a really great discussion so far.
Hi, I have a question to ask regarding the grants. Where do you think, what places do you think we could really apply for grants? We know that THECB supports OER grants once in a while, but what could be some other places that are really supporting OER writings?
I mean, I know if you're looking to create OER, the Department of Education has the Open Textbook Pilot Grant, and that includes multiple institutions. As far as OER research, so kind of like what we did, I don't know that there's a ton. I don't know, Chelsee, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a little bit harder. So yeah, I mean, the coordinating board has some for creation, but again, I don't think there's any that they have that are for specifically for research at this point.
Thank you.
I believe the IMLS has a couple grants that are specifically geared towards libraries. And I know that I reviewed a couple of grant applications last year for them, and OER is their focus. So they're really looking for projects that focus on OER, either research or creation or ways to make OER creation easier for faculty and librarians. So I would check out the IMLS as well.
Yeah, I think in this sphere it is a little more rare to have these research grants. So we're very thankful that Affordable Learning Georgia is starting this, and maybe it'll start a trend. Perhaps other similar organizations will start opening up some of their funding for research related to OER rather than creation of OER, because we kind of need both. The research that I think we're doing is going to probably inform the creation of an OER eventually. Perhaps one about how to promote your OER. So,
Yeah, agreed. Thank you.
And I just want to point out that we have a comment on that in the chat as well. That if I remember correctly from the THECB reports, most supported OER learning / creation at institutions is internally funded. So that's a possibility as well to check with your institution to see if they offer anything internally to fund the creation of OER.
Thank you, Ariana.
Oh, and we have another question in the chat, really good question. If we're designing OERs for our institution, would you recommend developing a promotion plan before we start the project?
Yes.
I see head nods.
yes. Yes, absolutely, yes. I and Chelsee and Sabrina are a little more entrenched in OER than I am at the moment. But when I was a little more involved with an OER grant project at my previous institution, I don't recall anybody planning for promotion. And the more I learn about this, the more I think that's a mistake. Thinking ahead, it just can't be a bad thing. And that's hopefully what some of our future research is going to explore in a little more depth.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I will say, anecdotally, I was on an OER project last year with some faculty, and I was serving as like a copyright and open access expert, but each of the faculty members were meant to write chapters of this open textbook on their own. So I helped with some copyright open access things. I heard nothing more from the project until I got a ping on my Google Scholar profile, which said, there's an open textbook that's been published and you've been listed as a contributor. I had no idea. So, I mean, that's also probably the fault of the PI on that project. But that notwithstanding, there was no promotion of this OER. Who knew that it was being written or created? How could I also, as a librarian, help share it out when I didn't even know that the project was completed? So we didn't have that promotion plan built into our grant and our project. But if we did, then first of all, I would not have been surprised to see that pop up on my Google Scholar. But second of all, more people would know that it exists.
Thank you. So if we have any final question that someone wants to put in the chat as maybe our last question before we wrap up, this is your chance. Or if you don't want to put it in the chat, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask.
And I will just advance the slide one more so that you can have our email addresses if you feel more comfortable emailing us directly, or just keep them for later use, because we'd be happy to talk to you about OER advocacy, sustainability, or open ed in general.
Great. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank our presenters again so much. This was a fantastic presentation and discussion. I also want to encourage our attendees, if you want to continue the discussion, you can do so in the Open Texas Conference portal in the Keep On OER Talkin' Texas and Beyond community discussion. And we also hope to see you at the closing plenary session at 11:15. So I will now go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all for coming.